most people are somewhat familiar with our work, but not everybody. And I wanted to make sure we're all on the same page about what it is that we do at Young Mountain. And so to do that, I want to start with a picture, and that is of this. Let me introduce you to Jamuna. Jamuna is a Himalayan farmer who lives in the Kumaon region in northeastern India, right on the border between Nepal, which is right here in Tibet. She spends 4 hours a day, every day, collecting firewood for her family's meals. I met Jamuna in 2013 when I was in the Kumaon region on a Fulbright fellowship, and I was there to document the way renewable energy technologies would impact local communities' lives. And so Jamuna said I could tag along with her for her day. And so this is how we started, right outside of her front door. She was getting her 2 kids ready to send up to school. You can see their toothbrush were tucked up in the corner of the picture frame. And then after they left, we went into the forest to begin collecting wood. And so about 15 minutes after I took this picture, I was pretty shocked to find myself taking a very different one. And that is this one right here. And that's the same woman, Jamuna, climbing 70 feet up a living pine tree without ropes or harnesses, and then chopping off the branches one by one to collect the wood to fuel her family's food. And it was a striking moment of coming into contact with the gulf of reality that existed between Jamuna, 70 feet up that tree, with no option to keep her family fed, and me with a camera in my hand and a return ticket back to the US, where I had been born and brought up. And so Young Mountain really grew out of this moment of realization that there are these huge gulfs of experience and opportunities that exist, and as a result, we're not seeing humanity firing on all cylinders. And so the question of what if Jamuna had other options to keep her family fed, what would the world look like? And it's pursuing that question that has led to Young Mountain Tea. So I started the company with a promise to a group of farmers in Jamuna's area that if they would grow tea, I'd start a company in the US to sell it. And the reason we chose to organize ourselves as a for-profit was because there's an opportunity in our hands. For the first time, American tea drinkers are discovering this world of specialty teas. You know, for many, it's still a kind of new realization that black tea and green tea come from the leaves of the same plant, as well as matcha and oolong and all these other styles. And so as this exploration of this higher quality type of tea comes into play, there's also the reality that most American consumers can't get teas that match their values because most tea companies buy from corporate grown tea estates that have long chains of intermediaries that cloud the supply chain. And so we thought, what if we plugged into this growing market to create a scalable business in the US that also delivers real impact to the farmers on the other side of the chain? And the way we do that, and have been doing that for the last 12 years, is by bridging the gap between the tea farmers and tea drinkers by working very closely with our farmer partners to make organic tea, and then providing our customers with complete supply chain transparency so they know not only what regions their teas are coming from, but even the people behind them. And then on the farmer's side, delivering a different type of real impact. And specifically, what I mean by that kind of real impact is this. In India, we have just finished the construction of the country's first farmer-owned specialty tea factory. And in the US, we are scaling up for delivering a new type of growth. And so it's a tremendously exciting moment for us. Thanks for those celebrations. It's a really exciting moment for us in transitioning from being traders of other people's teas to makers of our own. And it's in that moment of transition that we said, okay, it's now time to level up our sales efforts in the US and really grow the business. And so the fundraising that we're doing at this current moment is basically to help support growing our company to make this first factory a success and position us to help set other ones across the Kumaon region and hopefully beyond there as well. And so that leads us to this investment opportunity that we have today. And we're going to hear from 3 of the 99 investors who have joined us so far. we're raising a total of $375,000, and right now we've raised $250,000. So we've got about $125,000 left to go. Investments can start as far as little as $250, and we're using this money essentially to buy that first season's full inventory from this factory, building our team. I'm very excited to say we've already taken steps in that direction, and we've got Camilo, our senior advisor in sales, who's on the call today. And we're also putting a lot more energy into our sales and marketing efforts. And so for any of you considering investing today, we've got some perks for investing. For $500, you can get a lifetime discount for 20% off anything on our site. For $1,000, we'll organize a private tea tasting with you. And if you come in at $10,000, we'll invite you to join us on a guided trip to meet the farmers and make your own tea there. And that includes everything except for the actual plane ticket. So that's my sales pitch. We'll go into a little bit more, but again, yeah, super excited for the opportunity to share three perspectives of panelists who have joined us so far. And so with that, let's transition into actually the conversation. I'm really excited to be able to introduce three friends, three mentors, and three partners in our work today. And to do that, let me just read the introductions, and then we'll transition into the actual conversation. First up, we have Jessie Dean, who is the founder and CEO of Asheville Tea Company, which is a leader in artisanal farm-to-cup teas based in North Carolina. As a wholesale partner, Jessie's going to bring a unique perspective of the tea trade to this conversation. She'll share why she believes in our work and how our partnership benefits both her business and the broader tea community. On a personal side, Jessie's company was also devastated by Hurricane Helene and has, in the last 6 months, had to literally rebuild her company from scratch. And so their building had been washed away, and there's a video of this online that if you want to see, it's kind of jarring, but really through these challenges, the dedication and the resilience that she and her team have shown have been phenomenal. So thank you for joining us, Jessie, and thanks for all you're doing for the tea industry. Next up, we have Caroline Cummings, who is a startup investor herself, a successful entrepreneur, and currently an advocate for serving underrepresented founders. Caroline's a passionate advocate for empowering these founders through angel investing and community-driven ventures. As the founder of Vero Ventures and the former CEO of Rain Catalysts, Caroline expanded support to rural communities and has led programs aiding underrepresented entrepreneurs around the world, including initiatives in Pakistan and Egypt. Caroline's invested in over 23 startups, most of which are led by women and underrepresented founders. And she's been the founder of 2 tech startups herself, so she knows firsthand the barriers of launching a company from scratch. Today, she's going to share why investing in Young Mountain aligns with her mission to foster entrepreneurial growth and how this investment compares to her experience with other angel investments. On a personal note, I worked with Caroline in the earlier years of Young Mountain Tea, and I took a lot of notes on her leadership skills. And one of the lines that I still think of very regularly that Caroline told me was that everybody wants a mentor and nobody wants a manager. That's something we try to bring into Young Mountain. So thank you for joining us, Caroline, and looking forward to having you in the conversation. And last but not least, we have Paraag Sabhlok, who is the Associate Director for the Acumen's office in India. Paraag is the part of the leadership team for the India office of Acumen, which is a globally recognized impact investor dedicated to tackling poverty and advancing social change. Paraag's going to share how Acumen's investment in our work reflects Acumen's mission to empower farmers through ownership and driving systemic change across rural India. On the note of rural India, Paraag has visited Kumaon, the region where we launched our farmer-owned tea factory, and was our primary contact for over 4 years as we set up the legal and financial systems to develop our model of shared ownership. Thank you for joining us, Paraag, especially so late in the evening. And with that, let's dive in. I'm going to stop my screen sharing and pin our panelists. There's Caroline. And Okay, too many notes coming up at me. 1 second, where did we go? Here's Jessie. And Parag. Hey, thanks for waving. Thanks for being here. And I'll just pin myself as well. All right, thanks for that little warm up, and thanks again for joining us. We're going to start with a round of questions for all three panelists being the same. And so to kick us off, Jessie, we would love to hear if you can speak to why did you choose to invest in Young Mountain's work, and why do you believe it's an opportunity that others should consider? But first, to kick us off, please start with what's your favorite tea of the moment, and maybe what's in your cup?
Well, I will say this, that my favorite tea of the moment is the Cummings. I'm just going to go with that because we were very fortunate to be able to taste some of the first harvest from the factory in Cummings. And so, I mean, I love it. It's delicious. So we're just going to go with that.
Thanks, Jessie.
Yeah. Well, so in answer to your question too, I mean, we did decide to invest in Young Mountain Tea both as a customer, a wholesale buyer, and specifically invest in this round for so many reasons. I believe in Raj, I believe in Young Mountain and the work that they're doing, and I think there are a lot of reasons for that. One of them, you know, and I'm in the tea industry as well, and focused on similar goals and shared values to Young Mountain. And I think that, you know, from my experience in the industry, what I see driving the most growth in this industry are a few trends. One is looking at like bush to brand, or we call it farm to teacup model companies. And that means sourcing directly from farmers for ingredients that go into the teas or for the teas themselves. I think that really gives customers, consumers, this incredible opportunity to know where their tea is coming from, you know, and I think traditional supply chains and traditional commodity tea products don't really offer that opportunity. Also, I think sustainability is a big driver right now in this space. Folks want to see that the purchases they're making are actually creating a positive impact and making a difference. And, you know, you can see through Young Mountain specifically the impact that they are having and the difference they're making, both to the natural environment and to kind of social structures as well, and to the actual people and actual farmers who are growing the tea. I also think that, you know, our customers want to have a unique experience, you know, to experience something that is not just an everyday flavor or not just an everyday, you know, a cup of sort of like dust black tea, which in the tea trade we call the kind of the bottom screen of, you know, when you screen out tea leaves, the bottom screen is called dust, which is a very small particle of tea, and that's what's in a lot of tea bags. But I think having like a higher quality leaf and a higher quality flavor experience is really important to customers right now. And high quality too. I mean, that speaks to that same trend. And so, I mean, I think, you know, all of these things combined, these are the industry trends that I see, and I see Young Mountain sort of ticking every box on those trends. And that's where I think Young Mountain and other tea companies too, like us, are really truly driving innovation in this space. I think this is the innovation. The innovation is creating long-term sustainability that is actually positively impactful from what we say seed to sip, you know, for the farmers, for the plants, for conservation efforts in the natural environment, and for customers.
Oh, thank you so much, Jessie, for those words and that insight. And I have to also say the way that you've got the terminology from bush to brand is also really just, I think, painting the picture very clearly of what the goal is here. It's like connections all the way through. So thanks. Caroline, would you like to go next about why you chose to invest, why you think others should do the same, and what your favorite tea is?
Sure. Yes. Thank you. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. I love how Raj can pull people together from all over the world. It's one of my favorite things about him. What's in my teacup right now, and I'm going to give a shout out to Oregon because this is actually where Raj and Mitra and I met. And I just fell in love with the both of them, and the way that they know how to pull a team together and do a story and just create safe spaces. There's just some people that you meet that you're drawn to. And the two of them are definitely at the top of the list for that. So what's in my teacup is actually Earl Grey, but I throw cardamom in it. So this is why my favorite Young Mountain tea is the Darjeeling, the First Flush, because of the cardamom elements that's added to it. And I've tried many of the teas, and not only do I love all the flavors, but I love the story. So that's a good transition into why invest. Having been a founder and raising millions on my own, I know how hard that is. And having pitched to many, many, many investors who said, no, 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 no. One of the key things I heard from investors that I have adopted as a philosophy is, you invest in people first, products and ideas and market opportunities second. There's no shortage of great ideas in the world. There's a shortage of quality founders, quality team members, and the ability to execute. And more importantly, the ability to face barriers with grace and overcome them. And that's what Raj and his team has done in spades. And I'm sure you'll hear more about that. And if you've watched the WeFunder video or learn more about the company, one of the key things when you're making investments is how resilient is the company, just like Jessie's company and her ability to, make it through some major weather events and just start over. I always say that if being an entrepreneur was easy, everyone would do it. And it's not. Trying to create something from scratch is really difficult. Trying to do something across the globe adds another barrier. Trying to rebuild a community and empower families, and in particular women, that is something that I sign on for. So not only do I just say yes, okay, if Raj and Mitra call, will you do yes, whatever it is, but because of the ability to really deliver and to bring the stories of these farmers, of these families, of the land forward. How do you stand out as a tea company when there's how many hundreds, thousands of teas out there, right? And so bringing this story to the forefront, moving me inside here is why I say yes to investing. And I will always say yes to investing in whatever Raj, Mitra, and Young Mountain Tea is doing. So it's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh gosh, Caroline, thank you for those words. I got chills and big ones to live up to. Okay, over to you, Parag.
Thank you. Hope I'm audible.
Yes.
So firstly, it's an honor and privilege to be part of this panel. Acumen is an impact fund. We have been working since 2002. And in India, we invest at the intersection of climate and poverty. One of the biggest sub-themes under climate is the entire agriculture sector. If you look at India's population, which is 1.4 billion and counting, 60% of the population works in agriculture. Out of that 60%, around 85% are smallholder farmers who earn around $3 per day. It's like $1,000 in a year. And within that farming and agriculture group, tea farmers are even more disenfranchised because they are mostly landless. They work on daily minimum wages. And that was one area which we were looking to make a small change and demonstrate a role model which can be replicated across India and even Nepal and Sri Lanka, which are tea producing countries. The second part is the climate angle. Tea requires certain rainfall, certain altitude, and because of less rainfall, there is more dust that settles on the tea leaves, which reduces the polyphenols in the tea. And there's a problem of yield. So Raj and YMT is also involved in regenerative agricultural practices, trying to increase the yields of the farmers, so to make tea more sustainable. In India, if you look at the sale of tea, it's mostly through auction. And for a person selling the tea, it's a commodity. So you don't have that much margin to pass down to the farmers. So this was a model where the sourcing was done in India, but the market was US, where premium and high quality tea could be sold. So that was quite interesting to us. There are two types of tea, just going a bit technical. There is CTC and Orthodox. India consumes 90% of CTC and 10% of Orthodox. Orthodox is mostly the tea leaves. And there has been a huge wave and awareness about the health benefits of having Orthodox tea. The year-on-year growth in US market has been around 29 to 30% for Orthodox tea in the last 4 years. So it's a very high growth market. And we see an opportunity there from a commercial angle as well. On the impact side, we want the farmers to be given a fair wage for their work and to also have a stake in the profits that the company generates. If you look at the entire VC ecosystem, there have been quite a few companies which have been funded in tea sector in India, and the prime focus for them is to sell in European and US markets. And here we have a company which is run by Raj and which has access to US markets, which wants to integrate the supply chain right from the farmers and take them along. So bringing all these things together, we thought this is the right opportunity to build a community-based model. We have similar investments in Colombia, in cacao sector and in coffee sector, which has similar problems where the farmers are not paid. The cacao is sold at like very low prices, and when you get the chocolate, it's sold at very high prices, and the margins are not translated to the people. So we see a huge impact potential in the company as and when it grows, and also a huge market in US for the company to become sustainable and profitable with decent margins. And I'll just stop at that. And my favorite tea is the white tea and also hot Indian masala tea, which generally is like, yeah, for all time.
Excellent. Thanks, Paraag, so much. And as you all just heard, Paraag does his homework. And yeah, really a pleasure to have you all three, and the different perspectives that you bring is a reminder to me of how lucky we are to have not just our team that are part of the Young Mountain daily operations involved, but it's truly a network approach that we've been able to adopt. And so to have the vantage points of so many different angles is really critical to developing a holistic solution. Because if we just treat one thing in isolation, if we're just trying to grow a tea company or just trying to create impact for farmers, for us, that feels insufficient for creating something that's going to last into the future. So with that in mind, what we'll do now is transition into a little bit more specific questions. I've got one for each of you around something that's a little bit closer to your expertise or your background, or at least your relationship to Young Mountain, although feel free to take it in whatever direction you'd like. And so I'll pose the first one to Jessie. I think you touched on this a little bit already in your first question, but maybe you can take us a little deeper into the types of trends that you see in the tea industry that make Young Mountain Tea a good contender for future growth. So not just what's happening now, but the ones that are going to continue into the future. So Jessie, can you take that over and speak to it a little bit more?
Thanks, Raj. Yeah, I did hit on some of those trends: bush to brand, sustainability, high quality, a consumer experience. And I think where I could elaborate in regards to that question is that I think that all of those things and the way that Raj and Young Mountain meets all of those needs and all of those trends that we're seeing from customers really drive value in kind of a really lovely way for consumers, so that they are able to purchase something that tastes great, is very high quality, is sustainable both in terms of social impact and environmental impact, and is like creating this connection, you know, for people to the plants that are in the cup, to the people who are producing that tea. And that's something that I think that is, you know, difficult to find in the tea industry, but I think that that is the future of the tea industry. And so I really see Young Mountain on the cutting edge of providing these amazing customer experiences that are much more enriching, you know, and much more valuable for a customer to know what kind of impact they're making from their own purchases, you know, and to be able to support something that they care deeply about. And so I do see Young Mountain, as I said before, innovating and being, you know, kind of one of these companies that's at the cutting edge of innovation here in really creating a sustainable future for tea. I think that if we don't hear the voices of the farmers, and if we don't really actively look at plant conservation and regenerative agriculture, it's going to be tough to envision, a long-term future for these types of products. And so I think that the way that Raj is directly addressing both of those things is incredibly, long-term sustainable and shows incredible forethought and foresight. So, I think that's all I would add on that. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Jessie. And I guess I was realizing as you're sharing that I should probably share with you all that some very exciting news in the last 3 weeks is that we've actually hired our first 2 community mobilizers on the ground. So these are 2 women from a village that we were working with for about 3 years to do capacity development work. And these 2 women have been selected because of their leadership potential. And so investing directly into the, wow, there's like a lot of electricity going on, thanks. We're trying to develop a model working with our nonprofit partners in India in which there's 2 farmers per village that become the local leaders and help to serve as the kind of on the ground ears and the interface between the factory that buys the tea from the farmers and the day-to-day realities of growing the tea and harvesting it. So just a specific thing that's fairly recent. Okay, thanks, Jessie. As well, for everybody in the audience, if you've got questions or want to go a little deeper into specifics, please do feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we'll have time at the end to go deeper into that. The next one, I think we'll direct this one for you, Parag. You already, again, I guess, touched this on a little bit, but if you can take us deeper into what do you find about our model of having factory owned by the farmers? Why do you find that useful as an example of impact-driven innovation? And kind of related, a question that we've often faced that I talked to you at length about is how do we go about balancing the need for profitability and scale as a business with creating authentic social and environmental impact?
Thanks, Raj. I think, the focus for Acumen generally is when we invest that the company is sustainable so that we don't need to keep on pumping in money and then it becomes like a treadmill of fundraise. So we want the company to be self-sustainable through the product that they're serving. And in that process, also take people out of poverty. So I think this is a model where the factory has to produce high quality output. It has to produce superior quality output for US and European markets. So Raj has made sure that the factory is US FDA compliant, which is very important. All the equipments in the factory are top-notch in the tea sector. We have tried to make a structure, and that is what took a long time. And that is, I give huge credit to Raj. This deal took a long time because to navigate the bureaucracy in setting up the legal structures in a small remote area, I have been to Kumau so that farmers can get the benefits of high margins in processing. It's been a long journey, and Raj has been able to navigate that effortlessly. And what we are thinking is, we tried to make a structure in which we collected all the farmer members in a trust, and the trust becomes the shareholder of the factory. So all the future profits that come to the factory can go as dividends, as community programs for the farmers. Over a period of time, Acumen, through self-liquidating instrument, will also transfer its shares to the farmers. So farmers will eventually own the company. And that is a perfect example. So this is where this model can be replicated. Like I mentioned, that we have done similar community-based models in Colombia and other parts of the world. I think our main job will be to put it in front of the world through various channels and forums so that more people can adopt that. And on the other side, there are companies which are doing similar work in India, which have reached around 25 to 30 million in revenue with a valuation of 150 to 200 million. But they source from aggregators and from people who have large tea plantation, which doesn't necessarily impact the farmers. So this is a model where you have an opportunity to also take along the farmers with you. And that is how we are trying to see that there are enough margins for the business to be profitable, whereas also enough profits which are shared by the farmers for them to earn a decent livelihood.
Awesome. Parag, thank you. You touched on a couple of things that spurred some questions in this chat. So I'll just touch on at least two that feel somewhat connected, and then we can go a little deeper. Amy had asked how many farmers and what's the criteria for them, and Achint had asked him about the organizational structure. So just to tie those all together, the model that we're looking at is this first facility to support 500 farmers to have livable incomes based on an assessment we did at the farm level to say, what do you need to support yourself specific to that region? And the idea is that if this model works, 500 farmers earning livable wages and incomes through this factory, then we can go and set up others. And right now there's about 6,000 farmers growing tea in this region, Cumao, but there's more coming online every day because the government has a program that incentivizes them. So we can see a pretty clear path line to setting up at least 20 of these facilities if this model of 500 to 1 factory works, and we'll continue to grow on it from there. Achint, to your question about the legal structure that Parag alluded to, taking such a good amount of time and conversations with lawyers and accountants to make sure that we're optimizing the financial systems as well as figuring out how to do this in a way that will last into the future. This is a slide that kind of summarizes the ownership structure that we've set up, where Young Mountain and Acumen have co-invested in a subsidiary that was set up called Almora Global. And then Almora Global is one of 3 shareholders in Champawat Tea Makers Private Limited. And so Achint, it's a private limited that owns the factory. We trust on behalf of the farmers. Initially, we were hoping that this would become a co-op. We got to know the farmers better and understand where they're at. We recognized there just wasn't the internal capacity yet to run their own organization. The administration skills were just not, and that's actually what triggered us to begin doing these trainings that led to the hiring of these 2 women. So the pathway is to get them to the point to be able to run it themselves, but presently that's where we're at. And then the third owner of Champawat Tea Makers is our very close partner, Desmond Birkbeck, who's also the CEO of the company that owns the factory. And yeah, we can talk about more of this if you'd like, but that's a quick snapshot of the way that we're approaching this, and I'm going to replicate it into the future. Okay, thanks. And then we'll now transition with that to Caroline. And if you can speak to, why do you believe that Young Mountain's focus on empowering women is key to our long-term success? And somewhat related, and I think you touched on the second part, but what unique qualities about Young Mountain resonate with you as both a customer and an experienced angel investor?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think talking about investing in women is like my favorite topic. You know, not only being a woman myself and trying to raise capital, 15 years ago and then again 10 years ago, and being a white educated female in America still had faced major barriers. And I don't think it's a secret. Everybody knows, less than, depending on what year, less than 3% of venture capital actually goes to women-led companies, and less than 1%, it's like less than 0.5% go to people who are people of color. And then if we start talking about other countries, it gets even smaller and smaller and smaller. So I'll first say that when I was in Pakistan doing work to empower women entrepreneurs in a few different regions there, the US ambassador at the time would come to our events and would speak. And he always opened with something that still resonates with me. And he said, when women do well, countries do well. And that doesn't matter what country you're talking about. I think this is something that we don't have to convince people of, right? And so with Young Mountain Tea, the piece about empowering women, and I love that, Raj, that you share that you just hired 2 women. So the boots on the ground, hiring the local people to do the work, not only contributes to the sustainability of it, but this idea of the ownership, right? This shared ownership model it creates pride and ownership. And whenever a company can add that element to what they do, and in this case, it's in a very transparent way, you're going to see massive change, not just on the bottom line, which yes, as an investor, you want to see some sort of financial return, but the social return is what makes the financial return. It's the precursor to that. And I can't underline, bold, italicize that enough. And having been investing in women-led startups around the globe for about a decade now, I've seen it have profound results. And when I look at this community-led, community-informed as well, so you're doing the community-informed, you didn't just like drop in and say, oh, we're here to save the day. No, it was like taking many years, lots of time to talk to these farmers, talk to these families, connect with the land, and really understand what is the potential to nurture this land and nurture the women and the families that are living on the land, living off the land. And I think that is where we will see change globally happening. So investing in women is just a no-brainer. And I still am baffled at how little bit of money actually goes in that direction. So being able to put my own money into Young Mountain Tea is something that I, every morning when I'm sipping my tea and I'm having this like sensuous experience of the smell and of the taste. And I love the slowing down part of tea, where you have the, like, we're going to sip this, we're going to steep this, select this. There's going to be a whole savoring. I got a lot of alliteration, a lot of S's going on there. That's the why. And if we can embody that globally, I think I know that's where we're going to see massive shifts in how we work and how we live and how we engage with family and friends. So I don't know how many of you actually have an interaction and know the people growing your food. It's very, 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 yes, I live in a bubble in Oregon where I can go and I can meet the farmers, but not everybody has the ability to do that. And if you walk into your grocery stores, I'd challenge you to pick up 10 items that you normally purchase. And do you know the story behind that? Do you know the people? And is it transparent? Is it not greenwashing? Right? I think that's what I love about Young Mountain Tea, is this high level of transparency. It started from the story. It didn't start from, how do I disrupt the tea market and make millions of dollars? No, that's not what the driver was here. And so for me, seeing what Raj and his team has done and continues to do year over year over year, that's what I want to see as an investor. Is I want to see the results. And when faced with a barrier, because there's many, then what? And the way that you guys have pivoted and the level of grace that you respond with is how I, for lack of a better word, judge or assess or do due diligence on a team, and putting my money somewhere that I know is going to get tenfold return, maybe 100-fold social return. Because Paraag, you had talked earlier about, $3 a day in certain areas. And when I was in Pakistan, the women were making $100 a month, the equivalent of $100 a month to live. So when we were putting an investment portfolio together, I said, let's pick 24 women and let's give them $600 a month. So 6 times their minimum wage, and really make change, right? And so you guys are double, tripling down on these women, and by empowering them to make the decisions and being a part of owning, this is why I say yes. So I just feel incredibly honored to even have the opportunity to do this, because yes, I can have a bunch of ideas of, I want to make impact in these parts of the world and I want to support women, but it's catalysts like Raj and his company that I can stand behind and put my money behind, and always will, to be able to sit here and sip and enjoy a cup of tea in front of all of you. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for the opportunity to invest.
Oh my goodness. Preach, Caroline, preach.
Preach it.
Thanks so much. And there's so much there that I wish I could go deeper into. But at least one part is, I guess I didn't mention this in the beginning, that in the Indian tea industry as a whole, about 80% of the farmers that are involved are women. And in the region Kumaon, it's 90%. So when we talk about this benefiting the tea community, there's a heavy emphasis on the role that women play in holding this industry together that's often just kind of ignored or glossed over or fetishized as sort of these this like grace and kind of the niceties and like framing this as like an experience that connects you to cleanliness, but not really recognizing how significant the amount of labor that goes into these tea bushes are. Like, for example, I was shocked to find when I was there in July, which is the monsoon season, that in the middle of the rains with leeches literally crawling on these women's legs, they were going out there in the mornings. And that kind of toughness, that kind of grit and resilience is really what I think the whole world needs to know and celebrate. And so when we think about our cups of tea, it goes so much beyond just our experience, but all the way back to the farmers themselves. And this a little bit connects to a question that Maveen put in the chat about the challenges that you faced to get to our current stage. When we began to float this idea of what if we set up a factory that we co-own with farmers, we went around and spoke to the villages surrounding the first site that we had chosen. And we went as a group, me, our partner Desmond, and then a nonprofit organization that's very locally embedded called Earthcraft. And we started just by sitting in circles. And it's kind of these simple things that might not seem dramatic, but really we found out over time are the difference between meaningful trust being built versus just kind of transactional relationships. It was sitting in circles on the ground alongside the farmers, hearing them out first, asking more questions than leading with solutions, and then crafting our next steps together with them. And so that's when we realized, okay, the capacity to run an organization that has legal obligations doesn't exist yet. So what do you need and what kind of support would you like? And then crafting the trainings that we developed over this 3-year window to really match where the farmers are at as they're growing. And initially, we're rural India, this part of Kumaon, men hold all the decision-making power. So it was a really nuanced process of going to a village to say, we want to support your community as a whole by having these women attend these trainings, but they needed the men's permission to come. And so the approach was to treat the village as a holistic entity, as a single being, and to bring the men on board to see that this is not just to benefit the women, but it's to benefit the men as well. And not to view power or decision-making as zero sum, but to recognize that, as Caroline was so eloquently putting it, if the woman benefits, the community as a whole does. And along the way, initially the women needed men's permission to attend the meeting. Well, actually, initially, the men attended the meetings, and we found that if a man is in a conversation, the women will not speak. And so it took us a while to recognize, okay, what we need to do is figure out a way for the women to attend the meetings without the men in the village there. And that took a while to get to the point where there was a comfort level of the women attending. And then eventually they didn't need the permission. And then later they saw that Earthcraft, this organization that was really on the ground leading the trainings, that they had capacity on their campus and had done things like set up collective savings programs and self-help groups that the farmers could learn from. So one of the biggest milestones was when the farmers themselves had to travel, the women farmers, over to Earthcraft's campus and to see what an organization that is run by women looked like. And that inspired them so much that when they came back, they said, we want our trainings to now be focused on how do we set up collective savings groups. And so in the last 6 months, those savings groups have been set up. And that then led to identifying these 2 women as to be the primary people responsible for the account. So one of these expressions that bubbles up through this work is that this work moves at the speed of trust. And that has certainly been the case for us, that it is not sort of like, well, next year we want to sell this amount of tea, so you need to deliver it to us by then. It was really beginning with where they are and working forward so that what we're building is a solution that works for both sides, as well as both the impact and the business side as well. So I think with that, I will just say thank you to the panelists for joining us. And we can transition it now to, if there's questions from the audience, either to any of the panelists or to me, we can do that. I think there's one more in the chat that we had touched on, but not had a chance to go into from Melanie. Oh, about the anticipated tariffs affecting Young Mountain's ability to import the tea and how you mitigate the negative impacts. Yeah, presently there have not been tariffs introduced on Indian products, and tea specifically is a little bit in a unique position because tea isn't really grown domestically in the US. There's a very small amount of it growing, but it's not really a commercial industry. And so for that reason, there isn't the same level of protectionism around it. But long term, the plan is not just to sell to the US from this facility, but to have sales to within India as well as into Europe. And we've hosted a French buyer from a co-op whose purchasing power would be significant. Mountain would earn money from that is through being a broker and securing a brokerage rate on that. We're also looking at potential customers in Germany and Japan, and so working slowly through our networks within the trade to get those contacts and then open them up. And then, as I mentioned, the fact that we now have a very experienced senior advisor in Camilo on board as well, who came with us to India, met the farmers, understands the reality, and has had a very successful career building a similar business, is one that we're looking forward to building on with his experience in the mix. So I hope that addresses that. Are there other questions that you'd like anybody in the audience to pose to the panelists or to me? You can just come off mute at this point if you'd like to, or raise your hand. You can use the raise hand feature in the bottom of your screen if you'd like. Oh, okay. Luke's asking, will you be seeking trade finance for purchasing future tea harvests? How will this likely work as you scale? We're pretty much focused at this point at just getting through season 1, which is 2025. The first teas are going to get produced in the next month and a half. And the current fundraising that we're doing is to secure enough funds to comfortably not only buy the harvest, but likely we'll have to pre-purchase the harvest so that the factory has the funds to pay farmers prior to actually having some of the tea. And that's, again, a trust-based thing. We've in the past done loans against POs. So if a customer says, we want this amount of tea, we have the contract and we can approach lenders to get financing if we need it. But part of our growth is to ensure that the cash flow into Young Mountain is sufficient to both buy our inventory as well as invest in growth at the same time. I can talk to more. Okay, thanks, Luke. Give me the thumbs up. We can go into that more if you'd like, either offline or yeah, one-on-one. Well, I appreciate you all joining. As a reminder, you are invited to join Paraag, Caroline, and Jessie as investors in Young Mountain. I know we've got a lot of folks on this call who have already done that. We're at 99 investors, so whoever's the next one gets to be the lucky 100th. I'm going to drop the link in the chat to our campaign, and I'll include that in the follow-up email in case you're interested. But thank you for joining us. Thank you for caring about ways to finance impact-related businesses. And thank you all for a wonderful conversation.